Hello, this is Kayla Engel, and this is my Module 9 assignment. Section 1, summarize the case. One day at Rockert Junior High, David and James, who are both students of the school, were sent to see Assistant Principal Richard Inman due to a teacher suspecting a drug deal had recently occurred in the hallway. Principal Inman had background knowledge about both students involved in the situation. He had been working on building a stronger relationship with James, as he knew James had a past full of poor choices. Principal Inman felt that he was making a lot of progress with this student, as he had not been involved in trouble for quite some time. His prior knowledge of David was more limited, but he knew that he had not been in any kind of trouble before and was known for his high academic achievement and exceptional behavior. Regardless of Richard's personal feelings, he decided to meet with both of the students in his office along with the school police officer at the same time. When the students were questioned about the situation, David began to cry and refused to say anything. The officer then searched David and found a pair of brass knuckles, a weapon that is prohibited, and the consequences of having one in possession is considered a felony. At school, the officer immediately handcuffed David. After this, James willingly admitted to the officer and principal that the brass knuckles were actually his property and that he had threatened David that he would hurt him if he did not hold the brass knuckles for him. James also admitted that he had planned on using them to hurt someone else after school. In response, the officer handcuffed both students and took them to the youth detention facility. The board's zero-tolerance policy required both students also be expelled for 45 days or more as disciplinary action. The principal quickly began contemplating his decision on how he handled the situation and did not feel that David was treated fairly. David's mother came to the school outraged and spoke her opinion about how Mr. Inman was making the incorrect call. The school policy stated that paperwork must be filled out on both boys. Richard completed the form about James because he felt that it was the right response to James' poor decisions. But he chose not to fill out the form on David because he felt it was the wrong response. The principal felt that David did not deserve punishment for being threatened to hold an item and not being given a chance to explain himself or the situation prior to his arrest. The next week, David was back at school and James was in the DAEP program. The director of secondary education clearly communicated with the assistant principal that he was required to complete the paperwork on David as well, but Richard explained the situation and refused to do it. The director claimed to understand his reasoning, but still was enforcing that Richard must write the referral or Richard would be reprimanded. Section 2, report any legal or ethical issues. Decisions should be based on both legal and ethical standards being taken into consideration. Some of the legal issues involved here is the school has a zero-tolerance policy for weapons being in possession at school, and both students were in possession of the weapon at one time. The board policy states that when a student is in possession of a weapon, they are expelled for a minimum of 45 days. And the police officer was present and had to take corrective legal action with arresting both boys who were involved. Ethically, David was forced to hold the weapon because he was threatened he would be injured if he didn't do it. David had been an exceptional student and held a good reputation, and the fact that David just had the weapon after being bullied into holding it could now ruin his future. Something to take into consideration. Principal Inman is expected to follow the law also, though, and board expectations, but also is there to stand up for what is right for each student. Section 3, synthesize what has happened in one sentence. Principal Richard has been put into a situation where he has to choose whether he is going to do what is right for the student in his opinion or what is right for the student in the words of the policy of his school. Section 4, synthesize the facts. The people involved, Principal Richard Inman, which is a new assistant principal. James, a student with a troubled past. David, an exceptionally well-behaved student. The police officer who works for the school. And the parents of both James and David. The place that this occurred was Rockert Junior High, and the school has approximately 900 students. It's located near a neighborhood that is known for its habitual dangerous situations. The program is Rockert Junior High, a public school, and there's also the DAEP out-of-school suspension program. Section 5, review and prioritize information. Could the conflict situation or decision be damaging to stakeholders or the community? Yes. If word were to get out what had happened within the school, there would likely be various viewpoints on how the situation should have been handled, along with many different versions of what had occurred. What individuals and groups have an important stake in the outcome? The individuals who have the most important stake in the outcome are the two students and their families, the principal, the school board, and the admin. Section 5, continued. Have all relevant stakeholders been consulted? Yes. Also, stakeholders have been informed. Do I know enough to make a decision? I believe that there's enough information to make a decision based off of my moral compass and the information that has been given. Can I learn more about the situation? Has there been any instances like this before? What has happened in the past if something like that has happened? Can we take alternative ideas to the board for the policies to protect innocent students? And what all does being reprimanded mean for the principal? Section 6, identify your options and possible consequences. What could I do in this situation? Option number 1, make no decision. James and David either receive the same punishment, although it's not deserved, or boys are not given any punishment. Option number 2, the liberal or comprehensive action. Consequences will be given based on specific facts of each incident. The board will revise their policy to consider the gray area instead of leaving it black and white. Or option number 3, intermediate strategies. Principal admin should communicate the concerns to get the board and or court in an attempt to get the policy changed. Inman does not write up David and is reprimanded for that. And the principal decides to leave the school district, or David's parents create a case against the school and or principal. Evaluating my options. Option number 1 being no decision being made, which was James and David receiving the same punishment, although it's not deserved, and the boys not giving any point, or the boys not giving any punishment. The pros of that would be the board policy has been followed with the first option, and with the second option of option 1, David is not wrongly punished. The cons is David will be wrongfully accused, and his future will strongly be impacted due to something that was not his fault. If no punishments are given, though, the staff and students may feel unsafe and or more bullying may occur. Option number 2, the liberal or comprehensive action, again, is that consequences would be given based on specific facts of each incident. The pros would be the principal would do his most important job, which is protect his students and stand up for them. If the board were to change the policy, also these sticky situations would not occur as often, and there'd be more clear lines and expectations. The cons would be the school could be questioned about why zero tolerance seemed to really be somewhat tolerant. Option number 3 is the intermediate strategies of Principal Inman taking his concerns to the board, Inman not writing David up and being reprimanded, the principal deciding to leave the school, or David's parents creating a case against them. Some pros would be David's life would not be affected by what James did. The principal would know he made the ethical choice. The cons could be Inman may no longer have a job and have a bad reputation for any further jobs. The parents and other staff may also lose respect for him and not follow his authority as well. Section 8, choosing the best option. Personally, when it comes to choosing the best option, I believe that the principal should stay true to his moral compass and stand up for his student, David. I would choose to refuse to file the paperwork on David and take my concerns and recommendations to the board and or to court if necessary. I believe that you should always do what is right for your students, and this would be the best possible option. It is your responsibility to advocate for ethical and legal decisions. This may mean that I would lose my job as the principal, but I would be able to sleep at night knowing that I did the right thing and that I either helped break the cycle of punishing innocent students or that I provoked change within the school system that not only helps David, but also helps students in the future. This would be the correct way to model ethical behavior in my personal conduct and to cultivate ethical behavior in others. Section 9, implementing my decision. I would choose the comprehensive approach. I believe that not all rules are black and white. I understand that the situation and choose to implement this work within a school setting. The example was consequences would be given based on specific facts of each incident, and the board will revise their policy to consider the gray area instead of leaving it black and white. So having the fact that this child was forced into holding the brass knuckles not result in him getting the 45-day suspension. Some likely outcomes that may occur. This decision may result in some upset parents who are not informed of all the details in the situation. It would require for the board to alter their policy, possibly. If the school did not agree, they could fire Inman, and or students may feel unsafe in the school or confused about the definition of zero tolerance. How consequences will be managed. I would present my ideas of altering the policy to the board in hopes that they would agree and change the policy. I would ask that a statement be sent to parents and students that explain the situation, was still providing privacy, and affirmed them that the school was making the right decision, and to hold an assembly where it is discussed with students how important it is to speak up when they experience or are aware of any bullying situations. It should be made very clear to the students and community that the school's number one goal is to do right for the students, right by the students. Who needs to know? All important stakeholders, including students, parents, school staff, district members, and community members. Determine if you can deal on your own with the persons involved. I think this approach should be taken with the support of the board and school district if possible. But I do believe if the school district or board or board are not just going to support you, then I still think that you should do the right thing. Warn, don't threaten. I think the student body would be informed of future consequences of relative behavior so that you warn them of that and think about what you might do if this plan does not work. If this plan did not work, I would get the court involved if necessary or leave the school district because I didn't agree with what they were doing. In reflection, this case was very interesting to me and brought up some emotional feelings about a similar incident that occurred when I was in high school with a classmate. This particular classmate at my school was an honor student, the child of a teacher, and had never been in any trouble. But he had went hunting in the morning before school and left his rifle in the bed of his truck one day. He had planned on running home before going to school that morning, but it was running late and decided to leave his hunting gear in his truck and parked the truck down the road away from the school. Although he parked it away from the school, it was unfortunately still within the school boundary lines, and he was not aware of that. That was also, unfortunately, the day that the police officers came to search the premises for their scheduled drug, weapon, and alcohol check. The policy read similar to that of this case, and so that student was expelled for, I believe, 50 days. This went on his record and affected his reputation strongly. It was very difficult on the staff at the time to know what to do in this situation, and the student body was very confused. As a high schooler, I was furious with the school district for their decision. That seems so irrational to me. But looking back after reading the case study, I now understand that there were several hoops that the administration must have had to go through, and that they probably chose the best option in their scenario in order to follow the zero tolerance policy, make students feel safe, and not be accused of favoritism since this was a child of a teacher, and also to reduce the likelihood of future incidents. This case study really made me think about all the different variables that go into making decisions as a school leader and how all decisions that are made are going to have some sort of positive and negative effect. At the end of the day, I know that the best decisions will always be made when I take into consideration what is best for the student and stick to my moral compass. Thank you.